Adventures Abroad in Switzerland. There we go. Those are the two tour codes if you did want to look. Switzerland by rail, SW1, and XSW for the hiking tour, Swiss hiking tour. Some of the highlights we see here include the majesty of the Alps, of course, the Jungfraujoch and the Matterhorn, especially the Matterhorn for anybody who was a little kid at Disneyland. The spring flowers, if you do manage to make one of the May or June tours. For me on the rail tour, the quaint little towns of Solothurn, Fribourg, Gruyere, Appenzell, St. Gallen, all these little old towns frozen in time are just a delight to walk through. And then, of course, there's some random moments of Swissness that I'll share with you along the way. Some of the photographs that you're seeing here, the lovely blue lady, that angel, she hangs in the Zurich train station. She's a big welcome in the main Hauptbahnhof. The window that you see next to it is at Chateau Chillon, some flowers in there, loads of photography options for you. The Swiss flag is flying on the back of one of the commuter boats that we will take on the hiking tour, or potentially a tourist boat you can take in Luzern. And then on the right-hand side, the mountains in Grindelwald with one of the little chapels, the mountain chapels, some quaint little spots you're going to get to see. So, you know, I'm just going to run over the mechanics of the tours. If you are brand new to Adventures Abroad, then just so you know, my job is to feed you twice a day. You're responsible for your third meal and any drinks. I'm going to get you from A to B, do my best to keep you happy. Any questions above that, like when we move to COVID protocol, sales, issues like that, a little above my pay grade. So I would push you to the website for that at the end of the tour. But from here on in, everything I show you, please take some notes, and I'll be ready for questions at the end. Some good notes for both tours. Packing and orientation on this. The pre-departure information that arrives when you confirm the tour says it best. There's two kinds of people on the tour. Those that pack light and those that wish they did. There's a lot of moving on and off of the trains, storing of baggage on the trains, extremely punctual trains, so we have to be too. And that can be a little bit of a game to play. So if you can manage your stuff, you're going to be so much happier. Of course, now I'm going to tell you to bring a bunch of layers because we can have every season in a day, but it just takes a little bit of an art to curate the right suitcase. So you're not carrying too much weight, but you have everything you need. Sensible shoes, always helpful, of course. Cobblestone streets, even on the walking tours of the rail tour. But once we get up into the mountains and hiking, you just want to be comfortable, uphill and downhill, quite possible. So make sure you feel sturdy. Poles, never a bad idea too. We do some walking, so it's quite helpful. Punctuality, as I've already leaned towards, is very important. We're so beholden to train schedules really on both tours. If that train says it's leaving at 9:41, it's not going to leave at 9:42. So it's also not going to leave at 9:40. So you've got room to work with it on both sides. It just becomes a bit of a stressful schedule till you get your comfort zone built. Refillable water bottles are a great thing to bring on this tour. They have tapped the Swiss Alps, so the meltwater runs freely through all of the towns everywhere. It's so easy to refill throughout the day. And it's so wonderful. And some of the tours where that's not possible and we go through so much plastic, it's great to be able to have a reusable bottle that you can keep with you the whole time. And just the reminder, European electrical outlets, you're looking at the 2 round pins, 220 volt, most of your electronic stuff, and blow dryers can be set to handle both. So just make sure you're going to be able to get into the wall. But that's not a difficult tour to replace things along the way. That's one of the beauties of this one. It is pretty easy, but there's a lot of, you know, little details that make it nice to have someone taking care of it for you so you can just watch out the window. Some of the customs that concern us when we look at Switzerland, and it's 4 languages. So Grüezi or Grüezival, a great thing to learn. That's a greeting when you are walking into a store, passing somebody on the street. The greeting part of it is the most important, though. We would walk into a store and not even think twice about walking up to a counter and say, "Could I have a large coffee, please?" and go back to your phone. The person behind the Swiss counter is going to look at you and wait for you to acknowledge them as a human on the other side of the counter. You're meant to say, "Hello, could I have a large coffee, please?" and then go back to your phone. That acknowledgement is really, really important and kind of a cool twist from the Swiss. Trains are a common space, so respect is a must. We tend to be very quiet. I'm not going to address you as a group. I'll walk up quietly, grab people in the car and say 10-minute warning, 10-minute warning, but I'm not going to yell, hey, adventures abroad. So that's more a time to relax. Do a daily journal, bring along your knitting if you wish, something like that, books, music to stare out the window by. And one thing that I didn't put in here, but I wanted to mention, for photographers, for your packing and orientation, a lot of your photography will be done out train windows. So anything to reduce reflection or help you deal with that, extremely helpful. Okay, I'll put that in the second run of this. Since I mentioned the 4 languages, I wanted to move on to currency because it's very well featured in here. I don't have a beautifully curated Zoom room, so I'm in my kitchen and I put up my map of from the Swiss Rail Tour, just to give you a bit of an idea of how it sits and how the languages work. You speak a lot of Swiss German up here because of the border with Germany, Swiss French over here because of the border with France. Gets pretty easy to follow. Swiss Italian, and then over in the corner, we'll bump into, outside of St. Moritz, Romanche, sort of the lesser of the 4, but don't ever say that to the Swiss. They believe in full equality and full representation. Very neutral they are, yes. And that's represented on the money. You're seeing some of the bills. These are brand new. I believe I have only ever seen the 10 and the 20 of these in real life, pardon me. The bills were started to be introduced about 2.5 years ago, and the 1,000 franc note has just come into place. They replace a series that had artists, Swiss artists on the front and examples of their art on the back. Their main language featured prominently on the front, and all 3 with the translation of 100 franc, 100 franc, in the other languages to be represented. The new bills are more to represent the idea of Switzerland and the Swiss. So if I take you through it, you see a hand on each of the bills. They represent something specific to the Swiss. I won't go into it deeply here because that's some stuff we can do in person. You'll also see a globe on there. It rotates, so you see the Earth in a 24-hour clock. There are Swiss items and Swiss places on the back. So that can be kind of fun to muse over on the train. And I do have a warning for you to get ready for a heavy wallet, 7 coins when you're dealing with the Swiss franc. One of the most stable currencies, but it does give you a heavy pocket. You have the 5, 10, 20, and 50 centime. Those are the littler coins on the left. And then like your dollars, your 1, 2, and 5 franc coins. This isn't an expensive tour on the ground. The standard of living in Switzerland is fairly high. Just so you know, when you do want to get your money out, about $1.30 right now for a Canadian and about $1.10 US, but we'll see how much that changes by the time we get back to normal. As I mentioned, one of the most stable currencies in the world. If you are a collector, those 1,000 franc notes being brand new and perfect, it could be a great time to invest. Communications on the tour, if it's important to you, it's really easy to grab a SIM card and hit the ATM when you hit the airport. Everything is there. When you come out of the main body, it's a shopping mall. So there's 2 carriers to choose from. Not inexpensive, but really great service, and it can be handy, especially if you like to do a couple things on your own or will have a couple days pre or post tour. As I mentioned, also a pharmacy and a grocery store right there in the mall in case you've forgotten anything. That moment on the airplane when you realize a charger's still in the wall at home or that kind of thing, not a problem here. And if you are a smartphone user, you would like to look into the SBB app. It's a chance to find your train. It's really, really helpful, easy to use, and really good if you are going to be there ahead or behind and you want to plan some trips. They have floor maps of the station, all sorts of information, including prices and timing. I'll show you how it looks when you're playing with the app. If you can follow along with my cursor, I've highlighted in purple things that you look for, like in the time of the trip. Big difference between a 56-minute trip and a 1 hour and 18-minute trip, especially in that this one has 1 train the whole way. This one takes so long because you're going to change trains twice. So if we have bags, it's a nightmare. I'm always going to opt for one with no swaps. But you'll notice then that becomes a little busier because it's more convenient. We travel in the second-class cars, which are absolutely perfect. Don't worry. We travel in the second-class cars. Today, this is going to be pretty busy. The 2 people lit up means it's fairly busy. It can get to 3, and those guys can also become red on a holiday. So that warns you that, yeah, okay, maybe the longer trip is better. But those are all decisions that are made easier with the SBB app. As far as transportation on the tour goes, obviously, lots of trains to get around on both. However, we've added a coach to a couple spots on the rail tour. So that gives us some freedom. when we're going to be moving around in Montreux, going up for our day in Gruyere, and our touring in St. Gallen towards the end. And both tours afford you a chance to get out on a lake cruise. Some of that will be transport on the hiking tour. The others just a chance to blow off some steam on a free afternoon. We will also feature the use potentially of funiculars, cable cars, or gondolas, those words interchangeable around the world, oddly, and even a chairlift on the hiking tour. So keep that one in mind if heights are not your favorite. We could take trams or buses in Zurich, St. Moritz, Zermatt. And which way will the train go? It's a very, very popular question because some of you cannot sit backwards in a moving vehicle. Don't panic. Unless we are on an ultra red train on a holiday, the last one kind of thing, there'll always be an opportunity to get up and switch. I can sit backwards. If you need to switch, come sit next to me. There's 99 times out of 100, it won't be a problem. And again, there'll be a Swiss person who will be most genial and swap if none of us can do it. Not to worry. An example, see all the sunny faces as we cruise along on one of the Swiss rail trains. This was years back on one of the rail tours. And that I know by the train car with the extra viewing up top is a day trip between Interlaken and Luzern. Gives us beautiful views, 5 lakes that we pass. I'll talk about that a little further in. We use Swiss rail passes on both tours. They are gold. They come with a little pocket about yay big, looks like an old-fashioned airplane ticket. And you're gonna have to hold on to that for the duration of your tour. Keep it very, very careful. It's extra special. Not only does it help us move around on the trains, but you can use it in hundreds of museums, probably thousands of museums around the country and in Liechtenstein. You can get, if not free transit, then half-price transit. All sorts of things are covered by your Swiss Rail Pass. The biggest challenge that will come when we're getting on the trains, as you'll see, is me as the little Australian border collie running behind and nipping at your heels and saying, just get on the train, please just get on the train. I know it's gonna pull away. I wanna get you on and get you comfortable. There is a car that we're aiming for potentially, because some of our trains might be reserved specially for us if we're meeting a guide in another city, and it's very, timeliness is very important. But next to that are 2 doors to 2 other cars, and we can easily flow back and forth. So that's my stress zone. It's getting you on board safely and easily and not letting anybody get left behind on the tarmac. It's happened once. It's never gonna happen again. Knock on wood. They had a phone, it all worked out really, really well. Moving on to a favorite topic. How about food on the tour? As you know, if you've traveled with Adventures Abroad, I am generally responsible for feeding you breakfast and dinner. Lunch and your drinks are on your own. In this case, I definitely, as you see in the middle paragraph, I pick a few places where I can buy you lunch to give you a night off in towns where there's really great options, because 15 days of Spätzle and Rösti can be a little bit much, but it can also be awesome. So just a few breaks in there for you. Breakfast will be served at the hotels. How that's gonna seem going forward from COVID will be determined, but I do know you can generally count on getting bread, cheese, cold cuts, muesli, yogurt, eggs, fruit, all the good stuff, everything you really kind of expect, maybe a few little surprises, especially fresh baking, lots of good bread in Switzerland. And as far as dinners are concerned, try to keep it Swiss. That can be very, very blended, but if you are a vegetarian, easy to get around that. We do almost always have meat, cheese, and bread in a meal, so it is a little bit harder for those dealing with issues with lactose or celiacs, but we can make it work for sure. It's part of Europe. It's really not that difficult, but some of the examples of the food you will be eating: meringue for dessert. It's like a pavlova in New Zealand and Australia, but the Swiss do love that. Upper right is Zuckergeschen. Yeah, I always have to practice saying it. It's veal with mushrooms in a cream sauce over Rösti. They're hash browns, basically. They're beautiful, and they're on the side in the Rösti picture on the upper right-hand side, or they can be the whole dish with vegetables, a fried egg on top, cheese, meat, just about everything. Little Swiss flag in the middle to claim that. And Nguetta. Nguetta is a great way to start your meal. That's their bon appetit just before you tuck in. Lots of chocolate on this tour as well. Funny note, 2020, the pandemic actually slowed the Swiss enough. They only consumed 10 kilos of chocolate per person, or actually just under that for the first time, 9.9 kilos or 22 pounds per person per year. It's the first time they've slipped down that low. It's everywhere and it's wonderful. As far as drink is concerned, the only thing I think that what might surprise you is surely the cost. If you are a wine drinker, it's served by centi or deciliter. So a single pour is a deciliter. 2 decis is about 6 ounces, kind of a smaller or regular pour for most North Americans. And that can come to about 14 US or 17 Canadian, give or take, to get what we typically think of a glass of wine. So if you might have 2 with a 3-course meal, it can get a little bit spendy. Beer drinkers, generally a little bit happier. It's very reasonable price for a pint of beer. It may seem a little bit odd when we sit down on the train to hear somebody crack a beer, but it's not. Parks, trains, public spaces, those are all available in the train stations where you're going to forage for a few lunches. I will do that where we can if we're having travel days. It's really easy to grab and go and have very good food on the train. Use that time. There's nice spaces for eating, washrooms aboard, places to wash our hands, get all set for the next step, and then we don't lose an hour in the day sitting down to have lunch. So yeah, you can have a little wine or beer with your lunch on the train. Nobody's going to look at you sideways. And again, that refillable water bottle, there's always a chance for you to get something like that. Hotels on the tour. Swiss hotel rooms, I like to joke, are like the Swiss, very pragmatic. You're going to have everything you need, really and truly, in a realistic amount of space, but nothing ever goes terribly overboard. Elevators are not always guaranteed. Porters, not really a thing, because to them, why on earth would you leave home with more than you could carry yourself? Kettles are common, fridges as well, air conditioning not quite as much, and a nice perk, personal duvets. So you each have your own duvet. If hubby is a cover stealer, that's not going to be a thing. That's a wonderful thing. Most of our hotels are within walking distance of the train stations. In Zermatt and St. Moritz, they're a little bit further, and we do have arrangements typically where the hotel sends a vehicle to take our bags. We might walk or we might take a local transit to get there, depending on weather, depending on the group. But many times it's a short wheel, but we are responsible for our own bags. Our usual St. Moritz hotel also has spa access. Just a reminder for spas in Switzerland, you generally don't need a bathing suit. You just need a comfort zone that's a little wider than most North Americans. This is a little chance for a break if you are only concerned in seeing the Swiss hiking tour. I'm going to be about 10 to 15 minutes going over the day-to-day of the rail tour. So if you like, hop up, go grab a fresh coffee, use the bathroom, anything you need to do, and come on back. Otherwise, let's look at the 14 days we will spend on SW1. Pardon me, I'm having some coffee. Arrival day in Zurich, day 1. Zurich Airport is truly easy to negotiate. Don't tell the office, but you shouldn't really need to purchase a transfer for this tour unless you are someone who really gets knocked out by inter-time zone travel, or you're really bad at directions and you know it, because the train station in Zurich is massive and can be a little bit confusing. You'll get where you need to go. But if that's something you need some help with, I'll meet you at the train station and I'll walk you hand in hand, easy as. But with the apps, as I mentioned, you should be able to plan your own way to the hotel. You can get a SIM card as the airport to help you, along with anything else you've forgotten. And if I don't meet you at the airport, at the hotel, you will be met by me or a note from me with lots of explanations of things you can do with the Swiss Pass I've included, so you can hit the ground running. I do find a lot of people come in the morning. You come in about 10 o'clock, you're really zoning out, but you can't get into your room till 2. So the Swiss Pass allows you to go out and see a few things just to kind of keep you on your feet till you can come back in for that nap. And we'll go out for our first dinner that night and get to know each other. Then we will undertake this trip. Hopefully you can follow my cursor. I'm gonna stare at my screen for a little bit, so pardon my squints. In Zurich, we start with a morning tour, heading on to an afternoon tour in Bern, spend the night. We will stop in Solothurn the next day, where I'm going to show you the city wall there. We'll travel on via Lausanne to Montreux, where we'll set ourselves up for a couple of nights. There we'll tour Montreux. We'll go back to Lausanne for a day, for a walking tour, over to Gruyere for another fun afternoon of exploration, spending the night in Montreux. When we leave, we stop for a walking tour with me in Fribourg, traveling on to Interlaken. base there for a few days so we can go on our Jungfraujoch adventure and do our day trip to Luzern. Back on the trains into Zermatt to go see the Matterhorn. From there, it's Glacier Express Day, Zermatt to St. Moritz. And in St. Moritz, we use a vehicle to go tour around here, Swats and Cernats. Sounds funny, but a Z or Z is like a TZ or a TZ. So you kind of hit it like Zurich. On the way home, St. Moritz to Liechtenstein for lunch in Vaduz. We will land in St. Gallen, make it to Appenzell for some touring on our last morning, and then whoop, right back for our final dinner in Zurich. And everybody heads home from there. This tour is activity level 2. I think that is an appropriate description because the walking tours are not too crazy. There's some uphill in Lausanne that can get you. But for the most part, it's flat, it's reasonable, and it's Europe. So lots to stop and stare at and catch your breath. The only thing really that's important is the ability to get your bags onto the train and tucked away so that we're not rude tourists. So maybe we get together as a team and we start to work the couple strapping lads that are there, help people get things up and aboard or up and above into zones, and I can find little cubbies underneath. It's good to work as a team, and it takes a lot of the stress off because we are, as I mentioned, working against time. But activity level 2, if you've done one before and think you can do it, you should be just fine. The only throw out is the Jungfrau Day. With its altitude, that can affect a few people, but got lots of ways to cope with that because I've had different experiences up there. Moving on to day 2, this is a lot of walking. We're going to have 2-hour walking tours in both Zurich and Bern. We'll check out of the hotel in the morning. Our guide will meet us there. We walk on, generally finishing with the Marc Chagall windows at the Fraumünster Cathedral, especially if I manage to get Ari as our guide. I have to give him 20 minutes. It's delightful. He's got everything down pat. We'll pack our lunch and our bags, get on the train to Bern, drop everything, have a walking tour. You'll be exhausted by the end of it, but I will take you out for a mushroom spätzle that night that will change your life. I promise. Here's some pictures just to see what we'll show you. First day of the morning, this is Zurich on the left. The Fraumünster is the blue spire there in the distance, and the Zurich Sea, a great chance to go on a boat tour if you're there a little bit early. And on the right-hand side, the capital city of Bern, you do see its famous Zeitung there in the back, plenty of colorful fountains, and the walled shopping arcades on each side. Those are very, very typical Bern city settings. Day 3, we will do some traveling. Bern to Solothurn, store our bags, and then walk into town and explore this quaint little village. Usually I'm able to give you time for coffee and cake in the square or to grab some lunch, but we'll grab a meal for the train once again so that when we arrive in Montreux, we're going to drop bags and run out and see that town as quick as we can. We start at the Freddie Mercury statue in Montreux. If you're a fan of the 70s rock band Queen, they did a lot of recording there. And so Freddie has his own statue and a studio he's left behind in a legacy. From there, we just proceed along the boardwalk. It's beautiful strolling along the lake. We'll make our way down to Chateau Chillon, the Niagara Falls of Switzerland. It's the most photographed spot according to Tourism Switzerland. And get you back home in time for dinner. Again, another busy shuffle day, but well worth it. On the left, you see Chateau Chillon, on the left, you see the St. Ursula's Cathedral in Solothurn, and the city gate in the back left-hand corner, and Chateau Chillon on the lake. Obviously a little bit of filter action going on there, I'm guessing, but it really is truly a beautiful little spot. Day 4, we will be based here in Montreux, visiting Lausanne and the Gruyere zone. On this, we'll take a train over to Lausanne, meet our local guides. I'm sorry if my friends start off on a little texting chain. I haven't been able to stop that from doing that. Hopefully I don't go ping, ping, ping for a few minutes. If I do, I apologize. Quick train trip to Lausanne. We'll meet our local guide, have a Saturday market to stroll through, which is really lovely. And with the addition on the bus that picks us up there, we now have a very casual afternoon in Gruyere. That's a chance to learn a little bit about how the Swiss make cheese in the town of Gruyere, duh, right? We get some cheese samples and then set off into the castled wall hill, city on the hill. There you can visit the castle, self-guided. There's all sorts of eclectic sightseeing. If you remember the movie Alien or Aliens or Alien 3 with Sigourney Weaver, the monster was created by a Swiss man, and he has a bar dedicated to him that is like nowhere else. There's a collection of Buddhist relics in a deconsecrated Catholic church that is, again, like nowhere else. So it's really a fun afternoon to spend time. I recommend you kind of graze throughout the day because we have an early fondue dinner with some Gruyere cheese in town before I get you back for a final chance to stretch your legs on the boardwalk in Montreux, because tomorrow we head off to do some visiting. Before we do, though, I will squeak in a visit in Lausanne of the Olympic Museum. Hopefully you can see that that is the high jump. You walk in underneath that, so that's got to be 8 feet, and somebody does the Fosbury flop over top of that. It's a wee bit humbling. And here in the town of Gruyere, on a bit of a drizzly day, you can see what I mean here in the forefront about the different fountains that are available. There's 2 little spigots there on the side. You just lean in with your bottle, fill it up, and all is well. When we leave Montreux, we will stop for a Sunday, a lazy Sunday in the town of Fribourg. This is a fun one. It's a university town geared a little bit younger, so it's very quiet when we arrive. We get to stroll through the new part of town, the old part of town, on the way visit a Sunday market, and end in a beautiful square where I tend to buy you lunch because it's just a nice way to finish all of our walking. And we head back to the train, arriving in Interlaken, which is a very colorful and multicultural town. Great chance for you to have a break from Swiss meals. Take yourself out and reset yourself. Interlaken is, as I mentioned in here, a real tourist town. People come for the skiing in the mountains around. In the summer, you have Lake Thun and Lake Brienz, beautiful blue water, paragliders all year round because the winds in the mountains are perfect. If you want to have coffee in the main square and watch them land, some are successful, some not so much. And you can also watch for your favorite Bollywood film actor. The mountains around Kashmir, Pakistan, they're not stable. The movie industry has moved to Interlaken for more than a decade. So often you find tourists moving through trying to find the field where Aishwarya Rai had wounded a girl, that kind of thing. And so it's kind of entertaining to see all of the different cultures mix in Interlaken. As I mentioned, we'll send you out for your own dinner and a chance to peruse some of the $30,000, $40,000 watches that are on sale in this very touristy town. Unfortunately, the only picture I had in my collection of the bridge where we finish our walk in Fribourg, I don't have beautiful flowers on it, which is a shame. That is probably the fall tour. Every year, all of these covered bridges in the towns get beautiful hanging baskets. So yeah, it's a bit of a photographer's dream. Day 6 is our Jungfrau Joch adventure. The Jungfrau is the mountain, the Joch is the ridge of the mountain. The Jungfrau stands on one side. The Eiger, as you remember from the Clint Eastwood Eiger sanction film, stands on the other, and in between is the monk, or the monk. The monk is meant to stand guard. He keeps the purity of the Jungfrau, young woman, against the Eiger. So that's the legend of the 3 mountains, which we're going to take a train through today. It's quite a feat of engineering. We will take a train up from to Grindelwald, where there we meet the cog rail that takes us up to Kleine Scheidegg with the view of the mountains right there. You'll be able to see what we're headed for. And it becomes a pretty slick tourist spot up top. I'm gonna jump ahead just so you have the perspective to see this. Oh, girls, this is killing us. They have to stop chatting. When you arrive, we come up into this wooden-sided area of the mountain. We're almost 12,000 feet in the air. It's crazy they were able to build this. In that is a restaurant, a train station, all sorts of shopping, tourist kind of stuff, everything you need for arrival and departure on the mountain. And then we will begin our tour. We walk through the glass part here. We move in and amongst this area in the mountain with Disney-esque, big, grand, moving pictures to stare at on the wall, information about the weather station it began as. On top of that, you can see the weather station itself. That's where they collect all kinds of information for the country still after all these years. We're also going to get on an elevator and it's going to whip us up here to the Sphinx. The Sphinx looks like this when we're up top. You can see how they can have an observatory space for all of the scientists. Again, a chance to buy a $30,000 watch and a chance to walk around the platform here. You'll see some people standing here taking photos. They're looking back down the hill at Interlaken. On the other side, you can just make out that they're looking down on the Aletsch Glacier. That's the longest running glacier, flowing glacier in mainland Europe. Iceland has a longer one, but there you go. There's the Aletsch Glacier behind you. Inside, here's an example of the ice palace that we walk through. It's a little touristy, kitschy, but it's really lovely. And we pray for a great weather day. I have come out at the top of the Sphinx and it's just cloud. It happens. Most of the time we can still entertain ourselves, but it depends on whether we're going to have a shorter Jungfrau Joch adventure or a longer one. Again, this is one of the days where altitude can get to you, over 12,000 feet for the day, or 3,500 meters, if that helps you picture it a little bit better. But it is really quite a feat of engineering and a wonderful day. For perspective, these are the three mountains, the Eiger, the Monk, and the Jungfrau. This is the train station where we catch everything, possibly have lunch, and that's got to be where Clint Eastwood was reclining as he looked up onto the face of the Eiger in the film. If you haven't watched it, don't. It hasn't really stood up to time, just in my humble opinion. We've moved on to day 7 now. This is a day trip to Luzern from Interlaken. It's a beautiful train ride. We pass 5 mountain lakes, just sitting back and watching, about 2 hours. So if you have a knitting project or anything you want to bring along, that's a good day for it too. We will be met on arrival in town for our walking tour. One element that's called the Lion Monument, it is often left off on the walking tour because there's just so much to see in Lucerne. But I will obviously try to fit that in. We should wrap up with you just starving enough to go for lunch. And then your afternoon is free if you want to do a trip on the lake yourself to do a little sightseeing. There's also a couple great museums, the Transportation Museum and the Rosengart Museum, which has Paul Klee's, Picasso's, all sorts of wonderful art. I have a lovely riverside spot for us to have dinner on the way home. We'll do that before we get back to the hotel. Makes for a long but a lovely day because we generally stay near the smaller train station. When we get back to the bigger one, there's a lovely restaurant with a gentleman. His name is Ernst, and the importance of being Ernst is never lost on him. He serves us a lovely dinner, and he's been a go-to ever since I started doing these tours. So there's a lot of faces I'm really excited to see again, and I'm sure you are too. On the left here, you see the picture of the Lion Monument, the most mournful piece of stone you will ever see, according to Mark Twain. And on the right, the Kappelbrook in Luzern. I had to steal a stock photo from online because I just couldn't do one justice. That year was such beautiful flowers. You'll see scenes like that around Switzerland all summer long. Day 8, we move from Interlaken down to Zermatt, or up altitude-wise. 3 train rides to start our day. Yeah, we're going to be a little pooped when we get there, but when we arrive in Zermatt, the hotel generally arranges to pick up our bags. Once that's sorted, we walk across the parking lot, a little quick right-hand turn of the head, and there you go. It's the Matterhorn, as long as the weather gods are playing along with us. If they are, we will spend the afternoon getting to know Zermatt. I want to show you the Hinterdorfstrasse, the old wooden buildings dating from the 1500s, the Matterhorn Museum in town, and a few other points like the Climber Cemetery, very poignant in the city that we're in. And save the Gornergrat for tomorrow. It's in your itinerary for today. If we know we got great weather tomorrow, we can spend the whole day, and that's a lot more fun. It's a better way to do it. So hopefully the weather gods are kind. Otherwise, you get this photo to bring home. That is us at the top of the mountain. Off in the distance is supposed to be the Matterhorn. Instead, I always make sure you go up the mountain with a Toblerone bar because the mountain, the shape that you see there on the package is inspired by the Matterhorn, as is the triangular shape of the chocolates if you've had them. So at least you have that. And you can always come back, right? Mountain's always there. You just got to come back. So this should be our day 9, Gornergrat and Matterhorn day. We take the mountain rack railway up to the top, and then from there, we can do a lot of things. We are basically in the midst of a giant ski resort. If you wanted to, you could ski to Italy for lunch. However, we're generally not there when the resort time is operating. We are going to be hiking or walking. So chance to explore at the weather station at the top of the Gornergrat, much like at the Jungfrau. There's a beautiful lake at the second to last stop. In the fall, it's melted enough that you can get a beautiful reflection of the Matterhorn in the lake. It's a really great walk, one I will really try to do. If we're there in the spring, that probably is not going to be available to you, so we'll move a little bit lower down the mountain, and then we can do our walks maybe down into the town of Furi, where we can have a mountain lunch walking back in, gondolaing back in. You can train right up and train right back, just in case you're feeling a little fatigue. This day is easy to be flexible with. So there's lots to do or little to do, but that should be all about the Gorner Grat and the Matterhorn. There's a little image, the reflection of the Matterhorn. Not sure how it became all about me because I'm really standing in the way there. And on the right-hand side, some garden gnomes. One of the little places in Forey, these are little houses that people have. And then in their basements or on their patio, they have opened up a little restaurant. And Mama bakes a cake in the morning and there's always fresh coffee or hot chocolate or beer. And you can come after your hike and sit on the deck and have a really lovely break. And I just love those little gnomes that they've made. They've been sitting there for years. Day 10, a nice lazy one if you're ready for it, the Glacier Express. It is the slowest express train in the world, and they are happy to brag about it. We got our steps in yesterday, so today, sit back and watch the world go by. It's a very comfortable place to do it. You'll be sitting by 4. This is one of the only places. We do have assigned seating, so somebody's gonna have to sit backwards. We'll work it out. We'll work it out for sure, but we will leave time in the morning when we get out of the hotel to grab breakfast, again, at the train station, or sorry, lunch, to bring on the train with us. You can treat yourself to a Glacier Express meal. In my opinion, it's not worth the expense. I'm gonna take you out for a lovely dinner when we get to St. Moritz. So I highly recommend we just grab lunch on board, pace it. You can get wine with lunch, but I got a little cheeky with this photograph suggesting maybe you skip it. By the afternoon, just sitting still can be a little bit long. You can see the sitting zone on the express train though. The table does fold out, so it can be a little bit bigger for mealtime or a card game or pulling out the map to read along, or you can close it up if you just want some space to relax as you watch the world go by, as you do. An onboard announcement system will tell you everything you need to know. If you can leave the earphones in the whole time, they do give you little earbuds, so you can bring your own if you have a nice pair. In the train car, it'll say bong, you make sure you're listening, and it tells you a little bit about what you're seeing. I can always try to fill in some blanks, but it really is just a nice casual day. There's a chance for a walk before dinner when we hit St. Moritz, but it will be day 11 when we really explore this ski and shopping town. It is the birthplace of tobogganing. Canadians, maybe a few Northern Americans will feel a little pull on the heartstrings on this one. This is where they started to fling themselves down the icy climbs just for the sheer fun of it. We get a motor coach today, so we can follow a bit of the track and you'll see the way they bank literally sideways along what is a road normally, but during the certain time of the year when the Cresta Run is open, the city is definitely modified on your ability to move about. We'll stop for pictures in the picture-perfect town of Zwatz. It was a big, important political town at one point. Now it's just lovely to stroll through. And in Zwatz, we visit the Swiss National Park Museum. It's a little bit more geared towards kids, but I find people really do enjoy. It's a lovely bulk of the morning. We tend to have lunch in Cernatz and then get back in the afternoon to St. Moritz. And there you can kind of choose a walk around the lake, shopping in town, Sagantini Museum. It's really a bit of free time. Soak in the spa, again, that's available to you. And then a dinner on the town. Again, stole a stock photo, sorry about that. You see the Cresta Rider, that is where the run starts in the town. And across the street in the back there, you see the Kulm Hotel. I'll tell you about the very first light bulb in Switzerland. It was installed in the lobby of that hotel. Somebody had to change it every 76 minutes, but it was progress, wasn't it? Day 12, we're starting to peel down. We're getting to St. Moritz and on. Liechtenstein is our destination today, and Gravol or Dramamine may be your best friend if you are prone to motion sickness. We're going to travel through the mountains. It's beautiful. I'm so jealous of all the motorcycles that go flying by. We'll stop for a visit in the Principality of Liechtenstein. One of the first things we can do is stop at the tourist office and get your passport stamped. The National Museum, the Folk Museum there, is well worth an hour or two. Free time to grab some lunch, wander up to the castle if that's something you'd like to see. There's a lot of vineyards in the area, so it can be photography, postal museum, or just as I mentioned, lunch and beer in the square. We should get to St. Gallen in time to knock out a little bit of sightseeing. This is kind of nice with the coach. That gives us a little bit more time tomorrow morning to explore in Appenzell. But here in St. Gallen, one of the goals is to see this. This is the Abbey Library. Pardon me. It is attached to a monastery. It has home to some of the most amazing literature, thousands of year-old texts. If you are a bibliophile at all, you will understand the scribe at the front door. Its translation is apothecary for the soul. That is the spot here in this library where we will spend some time, either this afternoon or tomorrow morning, because I want to give you a chunk of time to see it. And all we have to do now is get up to Appenzell. Great little mountain town with its own little political history. It was the last canton in Switzerland to give women the vote. So this always evokes a good discussion. We can explore together. I'll leave you with some free time to wander because there's great photography. It is a bit of a tourist spot, folk museum, an art museum, patio lunch opportunity, and a local brewery. We'll pick up our bags in the afternoon, take the train to Zurich, have our very final dinner, and then, oops, sorry, I forgot about this photograph. I don't want to get too far ahead. That is the town of Appenzell. In the square, there was a time where not so many people could read, and you had to have paintings outside of your store to tell people what it was inside, whether you were a pharmacy or a part of the Welders Guild or the Bakers Guild, and you would do that with the art on your building. So you can see, absolutely picturesque. Day 14, our final day with you. Departures, pretty simple because you're getting used to the trains now. I've probably pointed out to you the train station track that you're headed for. You've learned the SBB app, so you'll be able to do it, but I'll help you make sure you're getting on the right train. Being a Monday, taxi is not the best option. Honestly, the train is your best bet. It spits you right out into the Zurich airport. And in fact, before you get into the airport grounds properly, many of you will have already checked in and dropped your suitcases. So that's super, super nice. Okay, so this takes us now to the little quiet point where those of you that know the Swiss hiking tour is not for you. You have a good 10, hopefully less than 15 minutes to get yourself a drink or use the bathroom. Come on back and we'll get to some questions and final details. But before you leave, a little random moment that happened. In Pontresina, this is near St. Moritz. This is a little thing I've discovered, a gondola that will take us up to a glacier. It's just an add-on. And one day we got on, all these gentlemen shuffled on. They turned out to be a choir, and this is the most Switzerland I have ever Switzerlanded. It's gonna take a second. Of course, I turned around and said, "Oh yeah, I planned that," but no, we don't have it happen every time. But that was really a lovely moment. Okay, so I'm going to move on now. There we go, to our Swiss hiking tour. In this one, technically, it's Zurich to Lucerne, because our final morning, you will take yourself back to Zurich. Easily done because you already figured it all out. But just for perspective, we do start here in Zurich, going clockwise this time, down to St. Moritz. Did you see me have to compute which direction that was? We do have a hike here that we will do up in the mountains. A lazy day on the Glacier Express in the other direction into Zermatt. We have a couple different excursions we'll do, including our day at the Matterhorn, and then on to the town of Grindelwald. This is Interlaken, where we stopped on the rail train. This time we go up into the mountains and stay in the little town of Grindelwald, because we will do the Jungfrau adventure, but we also do a hiking adventure here. That's Lucerne, that's too far. Just up here in the mountains, and so it makes more sense to stay a little bit more locally. So it's a quaint little town and a very different perspective. I'm also gonna try and sneak you over here to the town of Lauterbrunnen, which is not necessarily in the itinerary, but we'll talk about this in a second. And then we finish here in Lucerne with some hiking and then a day trip to Bern to finish. And as I mentioned, on the final morning, you'll get yourself from Lucerne to Zurich. Zurich City Tour. Day 2 works a little bit differently here because we're not racing to get out of town. We will once again be met in the morning by a local guide who takes us for a couple hours walk, but then we have the afternoon free. So if you have one of the many museums that's covered by the Swiss Pass on your list, absolutely, that's available to you. I'll help you figure out how to move around by tram. Some of us like to take, it's about an hour and a half cruise along Lake Zurich, where one of my favorite things to do is try and spot Tina Turner's house. Yeah, the gray building in the back is Tina Turner's house. That's her boathouse there on the water. And the space between the two, when you see the aerial photograph, is much bigger than it appears here. It's really beautiful. It's a fun little free afternoon for you just to get your legs on, because on day 2, we start moving about. This will be a morning train out of Zurich, getting ourselves to St. Moritz in time to explore a little bit in and around the Engadine Valley. We should be able to get there, again, with our bags being picked up, make our way to the hotel, and get on a walking tour to orient you. The photo that you see is being taken from the lake that is in the main part of St. Moritz. The ski town is up on the hill behind, and then it's mountains all around you behind, because it really is a ski resort. Again, we will go over the birthplace of tobogganing, move you around the playground of the rich and famous, and probably do a lake walk that day, take you out for dinner. Because tomorrow we get our steps in as we go hiking in Montes Morale. The Swiss are brilliant. I was terrified the first time I was given the Swiss hiking tour because I was not in the greatest of fitness. However, they're great. We start with a funicular ride all the way up, and then you walk along the top. In the spring, this is where the flowers really come in on this walk specifically. And then it's lovely. In the middle of the 7 kilometers is a place where we can stop for, again, coffee and cake or a picnic lunch. And it's a tiny bit humbling partway through to realize, oh my gosh, your servers did that work this morning. That same walk you just did, probably with a cake in their backpack. And that's what you're enjoying right now, or all the ingredients to make the soup that you're going to enjoy in just a few minutes. That's only at the halfway point too. So they walk back every day. They do what we do. That's quite the commute, 7 kilometers on a trail. The walking is mostly soft rolling hills, except this one's a bit of a punch to the gut because it saves the uphill for the very finish. Once we're done, we'll take a chair lift down and back to the bus and to the hotel if you wish. Whoops, sorry, no, on that day we have a train because this is the hiking tour. Or north to Pontresina to that glacier where we ran into the random choir. No promises, but if you're feeling good on that day, that's what we'll do. The pink flowers, moss campion, teeny little flowers that blanket the ground. When in doubt up there, when the color purpley blue like that shows up, guess gentian. 9 times out of 10, you're probably right. And that should be a trefoil up in the yellow in the right-hand corner, and a little picture of the mountain restaurant that we stop at along the tour there in the mountains. It's picture perfect, and I just am always still floored that somebody walks 7 kilometers every day to go to work for that one. Glacier Express to Zermatt today. We're going to do it in the backwards direction from the rail tour, but as I explained, the very lazy, slow day as you watch the world go by, play-by-play information. We're going to cross our fingers for lovely weather on this one. It's not the worst in terrible weather, but of course, it's optimal when we can see all the beautiful mountains around us. Day 6 is Zermatt and the Matterhorn. The Gornergrat Railway, this is the whole day for us, so we are going to get up there and play in our views of the Matterhorn with any luck from the weather. And then the way we come down will depend on a few options. We may want to get back a little bit early because we haven't had our chance to explore in the town. You want to save, again, the Old Town and the Matterhorn Museum and the cemetery for part of the sightseeing, but hikes are what it's all about there as well. So you could spend the whole day on the mountain. One day that was especially fun was coming down as the Zermatt Marathon was happening. It actually finishes about partway up the mountain, but there are some people that were in the ultra category who ran to the top. As we walked down, people started to run up, and again, humbling. Another option will again take us down to Fori, the little mountain town. We can stroll all over with views of the Matterhorn at the foot of the Matterhorn. It's what it's all about for our day today. For perspective, this is the town of Zermatt with the blue dot up there. That's where we catch the Gornergrat Bahn. Up top here is the weather station, the zoning where we're gonna walk out and play a little bit. There's the little lake, you can see if it's melted, and then options. You can get off on the train in a few different spots here and either do this teeny little walk down, a bigger walk into here and a walk down, go back up to the mountain. Basically, I'm trying to show you we're in the midst of a ski resort, and this is where you can take the gondola up, ski down to Italy for lunch because it's less expensive, back to Switzerland for the evening, and into your hotel. Kind of crazy. Day 7, we're going to get back on the train, Zermatt to Interlaken and Grindelwald. This day could be a killer, but if you're up for it, I want to take you to Trummelbach Falls. It's not in the itinerary. You're meant to spend some time exploring the town of Interlaken before we go up to Grindelwald. In my opinion, Interlaken is a bit of a slick tourist city. It's quaint, it's lovely, it's nice if you're going to spend some time there and be on the lakes or do one of the adventures. If you're just spending time, no, please come with me up to Lauterbrunnen. We'll do it with another train to see Trummelbach Falls. You have those three main mountains, the Eiger, the Monk, and the Jungfrau. The basin where their melt comes is all flowing down into this one spot on the Alps, and all of that water over time has carved its way through the mountain. We'll talk about rock flour, F-L-O-U-R. This is the silt that's in the water, and it makes it like sandpaper. So just the powerful force of the water moving through it, scraping the walls with with sandpaper has created these waterfalls that are like none other. This is just one of the 10 different waterfalls that we visit at Trummelbach. There's a couple spaces where you kind of wish you had a scuba tank and an inner tube because it looks like it'd be a riot, but it's an unbelievable force of nature. At full melt in the spring, it can be 20,000 liters of water flying by you per second. We'll walk one of the directions to it because the walls in the mountain town of Lauterbrunnen are spectacular, and then get our tired butts up to Grindelwald, where I'll take you out for dinner. It's a big day, but it really, really is worth the effort, as I mentioned, and it is a good day. From Grindelwald, we'll do some exploring in the mountain town there, the Backalpsee. Sea is lake, so we're going to Lake Backalp on this day. We will take a gondola up the north side of the valley. The cliff walk is up there. That's brand new. It was introduced in 2017. Well worth a look, see if you can handle the heights and the weather is good because it has you jutting out over the valley to see tremendous views. The trail that we will walk on eventually takes the 250-meter gain out of you at the early part of it, which is nice. And then we walk along the mountain to the lake and then eventually downhill, about 750 meters of downhill today. So knees and hips can be accommodated, but it can be big for you. Walking sticks or walking poles might be a good one on that one. Just for perspective, that lake that we will see, no guarantee it's going to look like that, not my photograph, but it is pretty spectacular. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the cliff walk. This is what they've built in the side of the mountain. I know that my mother gets a cold sweat every time I go on it because she hates heights, but it is a kind of a fun touristy thing to do. And as I mentioned here, we can have lunch on the mountain. If you're pooped, there is a bus that can take you partway down from the mountain. So then you would have lunch in the village kind of thing. But a lovely, lovely day, 8 kilometers walking, about 3.5 hours of total walking time with a little bit of free time before we go back out for dinner. The next day, we will have our Jungfrau Joch adventure, and it happens a little bit differently. Walking through the other side of town, we take a chairlift up to the top. This is a nice ski area that has a Wanderweg, about 90 minutes walking in a mountain path. The whole time we stare at the Eiger, the Monk, and the Jungfrau. Let me show you the picture. This one is one of mine. That's my group in front of me. It's a very casual, lovely walk along a path like this. And we get back in front there between those two sets of mountains. We'll have our lunch. And then in the afternoon, take the train up through the mountains, ending up at the Jungfrau Joch, which we will show you, the little Disney-esque space. Kleine Scheidegg is the little town where we have lunch. I'm probably going to feed you there so that you can take yourself out in Grindelwald because it does have some nice options. And by now, everybody's looking for a little bit of a break, maybe from the group, maybe from me, and maybe from the Spätzle, as I mentioned. Day 10, this is a beautiful day as we go from Grindelwald to Lucerne, as I already mentioned. This is a lovely scenic rail trip, 5 mountain lakes, little bit of up and down. And on one of the up and downs, here the photograph, you can see some clever carvers have created these little Swiss animals, and they are a Steinebruck, all sorts of them along the way, probably about an hour and a half spaced out. So it's kind of a fun game to spot them as they go by on the train. It really is just a lovely morning. We'll be met by a guide, do a 2-hour walking tour to get oriented, a little bit of free time to check out the Lion Monument with I'll give you some time to do the city wall if you wish, dinner on the town, and then we will have our hiking experience in and around Lucerne. This is the train station where you see the word Lucerne in the map. That's also where we're going to catch a boat. It does a bit of a circuit here around the Lucerne Sea, or Lake Lucerne, and we're going to hop off it here in Rigi. There is the Mountain Rack Railway, the first one built in Europe, that will take us up here to Rigi Kulm. 360 degrees of nothing but beautiful views, especially if it's a nice day, fingers crossed. And then you can see the little ridge here in the map. We have a more or less downhill stroll, potentially a picnic lunch. We can get here to the cable car that's going to take us down to Vegas. There's lunch spots there as well. No matter what, we're going to time it so we're back down here to catch the ferry that will take us back into Lucerne. Pretty good afternoon with a little bit of free time left in the afternoon because we're getting down to the last moments. That'll be your last bit of free time in that city because on our last day, we do a day trip to Bern, and it's a great one. About an hour's train ride. We'll be met again for a walking tour. You'll have free time as we finish at lunch. If you want to come for the life-changing mushroom spätzle, you should. There's also an opportunity to walk up over top of the town to see the rose garden. In fall, that's a bummer. All the roses are done, but in spring, quite spectacular. The Paul Klee Museum, you can easily reach by bus. It's the capital city. There's loads to do. And in the summer, if it's hot enough, you can also float in the river, as the locals do. I've not tried that one yet, but I'd love to. Sometimes people have flights that leave a little bit early, maybe even in the evening in our dinner hour. If that's the case, if it's going to really affect the whole group, I'll arrange for us to have an early final dinner in Bern. And if not, that's our last night. And tomorrow morning, you will all do the same thing as leaving from the Zurich tour. And that is to just get yourself on the train. You do need a little bit more than an hour. And trains don't begin till 5:30 in the morning or 5:35. So really, you don't want to have to be in the airport before 7 a.m. or you're going to have a very expensive cab ride. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're doing your booking. That is what causes a few people to leave for dinner the night before, but that's something to keep in mind. So now that you've made your departures, that brings me to the end of our tour information. This is the little card that I should include so you can see some of the dates that we have upcoming for both. On the left, the Swiss Rail Tour. On the right, the Swiss Hiking Tour dates, a little fewer of those. And because you were here to see all of this in our inaugural Adventures Abroadcast, thank you for doing that. We're happy to offer you another $100 discount if you choose to book because of this and you mention the webinar. If you choose to book because it seems like it'd be fun to do this with me, you want to look at the September dates for next year. I'm going to do a rail tour and a hiking tour. I can't commit to anything in May or June, unfortunately. So if you think it'd be fun to do, but not with me, that's the tours you're going to look for. And of course, it'll be ongoing, but we want to get you out there early and often because we're all dying to do that. We, just so you know, these Adventure Broadcasts came out of Zoom meetings we were doing together. We just needed to connect. We needed to talk travel. Each tour leader would pick one of their favorites and present them to the other tour leaders because there's always a first time. So having a wealth of knowledge like this recorded gives you a huge advantage when you're going and preparing and setting yourself up for that.